Good afternoon, everyone. So, we'll start with a quick mind relaxation technique because it's very, very important that your mind is relaxed and you're in a calm state of mind when you're preparing for a big event or an exam or anything equivalent. Because the more stable and calm your state of mind, the better you'll be able to perform. And what I mean by a calm mind is that your mind is not flooded with a lot of unnecessary wasteful thoughts. Example of a wasteful thought is focusing on the outcome. What will happen? How will it will happen? What if this happens? What if that question comes? What if this thing happens? Should I have done something? Anything, any thoughts which have no value at all. You could have done this, you should have done this. Makes absolutely no sense because that moment is gone. You need to stay focused in the present moment. So by eliminating those wasteful thoughts, the mind is a lot more calmer because it has less positive thoughts, and more important, your state of the mind is not fluctuating. You're not anxious. You don't need to be anxious at all. You need to be calm. You need to be composed. So it's very important that you sit in silence for a minute and just submit yourself, right? We discussed many times that God is your companion. Say, I submit myself and just sit in silence for a minute. That itself calms the mind, and it's fairly automatic. So what we'll do is we'll sit in silence for just in a minute. But when you are sitting in silence, it's important your mind is not wandering here and there, but you are sitting in inner silence where your mind is silenced with the noise of these unnecessary thoughts, and stay in the presence of one thought. I am a powerful soul because God is my companion. So even if you stay in silence for 1 minute and stay focused on that thought, that will automatically calm your mind. So let's experience that, right? So create that one thought that I am a powerful soul because God is by my side, and just stay in that moment. Coming back to the present moment, so I hope you can practice this 1 minute exercise anytime. It's an important mind relaxing exercise which you can do pretty much anytime, anywhere as well. And with your eyes open, you don't even need to close your eyes because otherwise, other people wonder what's happening. But nothing is happening, it's just that your mind is more calmer, peaceful, and your breathing rate will also automatically go down because When you are when your when your mind is a lot more calmer, your body tends to slow down automatically as well, because it is the soul which controls the body. So with that, it's very important. As you might remember, we have a quiz planned for today. Again, the most important thing is not to worry, because if you're worrying, then you're not going to enjoy it. Enjoy every moment. Enjoy everything that happens in life, whether it's according to your expectations or not. Things that you can control, do your best, but don't worry about the outcome. Similarly, for today, don't worry about the outcome, how much you're going to score or so on. Right? Life is not a race where you have to compete with others. The best competition is you yourself. How you can get better by what you were yesterday. So as long as you're competing with yourself, you will keep growing. If you compete with others, it's natural to be jealous, because you're competing with person A. That person is getting better and better, but you're not able to get as better as that other person, and that gives rise to jealousy. And if that person A suddenly has an event in life, they're not growing anymore, you're also not going to grow anymore, because you were tied with their success, their rate of growth. Whereas if you tie your self improvement with your own self, with your own betterment, there's no limits and there's no bounds to it. So your best competition is you yourself. And there's no reason to compete at all. There's no reason to compare as well. That, oh, this person got this much, I got this much. No, because that comparison is usually it's not positive. It gives rise to animosity and jealousy as well, as why did this person do better than mine? And our goal is always to think positive and think positive. So such thoughts again are wasteful thoughts. So we need to be aware of how our mind works, what kind of thought process we have. And once you change that thought process to a positive, progressive attitude of gratitude, then everything falls by itself. So I've set up a few small 10 questions for the mind empowerment as well. There's no reason to prepare for it, but I thought it'll be good for your self assessment to kind of take these situations and see how well you can apply the knowledge as well. So, Brother Prashant will post the link, or I'll see if I can post it in the chat window. So these are very simple 10 questions. All you have to do is select the most appropriate answers. Some of these answers, they look close to each other, but the most appropriate, the most accurate answer you have to select. And again, there's no right or wrong answer. It's is this something that we discuss? But just because it's not matching with the correct answer, don't worry about it, because some of these answers are also subjective. But again, at least it triggers the thought process in your mind, and having that thought process is important. Again, the answer, it could vary from an individual to individual as well. So let me see if I can post it in the chat window. Yeah, Prashant has already posted it. Thank you, Prashant. So there is the first exam, I think, is the mind empowerment, but it doesn't matter. You can take either of the exam first. So you've got two quizzes. One is the data architecture quiz, and the other is the mind empowerment one. So feel free to choose any order you want. It has 10 questions. I've put a time limit of 45 minutes for each, but that's just an indicator. Uh, Most probably you should finish it sooner. But if not, and if you leave out a question, we'll certainly discuss the answers at the end of the quiz. So as if once everyone has finished, just type in the chat window, I'm done. So that way, if anyone is remaining, we'll wait. And if you all finish it sooner, we'll begin the next quiz. Then you can automatically begin the next quiz. And then once you finish with both of them, you can put in the chat window that you're done with both the quizzes. You have to register your first name and last name. That's it. You don't have to sign up or anything. And if you're not comfortable with your last name or anything, just put like one initial. Yeah. So with that, I'll go on mute. If you have any questions, you can always ask any questions. So with that, good wishes to you all, and we'll speak once you finish all your quizzes. It's short 10 questions per each. Any questions? Otherwise, you can click on the link, put in your first name, last name, and get started. Thank you all.
मुझे अपने परिवार के साथ मामा की शादी में आगरा जाना है, बस एक ये लाइन नहीं है, बाकी सारा पूरा है।
And pretty much everyone is done with the quiz. Is there anyone who's still working on it or need few minutes? Otherwise, we can discuss some of the questions in the quiz or anything you want to discuss. Anyone wants to discuss the question which they think the answer doesn't make sense or the answer could have been different or it was very close or anything? I want to make sure, first of all, the question was clear and the answer, you understand what the right answer is as well. So does anyone have any questions? And it could be a question that you were preparing, but you had few doubts. There was nothing related with it in the quiz. That is okay, but at least you can ask the question.
Yeah, hi Mukesh.
Yes, Ashish.
Yeah, it's regarding mind empowerment question.
Mhm.
Yeah, the question is like, does God have a MDM problem? Do you think multiple regions have made achieving the God impossible? So, to
Yes.
my understanding, so I marked it as no, because it's not a God's problem. Though we can say it's like due to multiple regions or practices, people are made to think in such a way, so they are facing challenges. So in a way we can say yes, but more and more it's not God's problem, and it's not about religion. It's about because God has accessibility to all, so
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
can
Let's
directly.
expand on that. It's so so first of all, let's see, is the question even relevant? Does God have an MDM problem? You're right. God has no problem. It is our interpretation of God, right? So, for example, if you ask anyone from Hindu religion, what does God look like? Someone will say, God is Ram. Someone will say Hanuman, right? Someone will say, no, Ganpati. Someone will say Shiva. So you'll get various answers for it. If you ask the same question to a Christian, the Christian will say, Jesus is God. Now, in Vatican City also, they never said Jesus is God. They say he's the Son of God, right? But they never claimed he's God. But Christians, they believe Jesus is God, right? So MDM, which is Master Data Management, what happens is if God was a data entity, different religions have given different attributes based on their interpretation of the God. So, for example, where does God reside? What is God's name? So, the name itself, every religion has a different name. That itself is a fundamental problem because let's say, you have a same person. So, let's say, customer MDM. If I was managing the master data management for a customer, now this person, goes by 7 different names, right? Like people have their pet names. They'll call someone as Chintu, but their actual name, legal name is different. But it is the same person, right? So they've got different names to God, and Guru Nanak said God is one. But if you ask someone from Islam, they will have a tough time because they think God's name is Allah and it can only be that name. It cannot be any other name because they are made to believe it is that name. If you ask a Christian, say, what is God's name, they'll give you a different name. But actually, God is one. And the simple logic for that is if there were multiple gods, right? Let's take an assumption. Let's assume each religion has its own God. Then those gods, here on earth, humans try to compete against their religion, saying my religion is better than yours. But if those gods were, just for the sake of argument, separate, Allah is separate, Jesus, the God, Son of God, that God of Christianity is separate. Hinduism, God is separate. All these were separate. And here humans are trying to prove which one is better. Those gods, being powerful, they'll try to compete among themselves and prove supremacy. But that never happened because there is only one God. And one who's powerful doesn't need to prove anything, right? So, because of the attributes of, if God was equivalent in IT terminology, if I was doing a data model for God, right, what will be the attributes? His name, right? Now, the name itself is varies religion by religion. Where does God live? That also, you'll get different answers based on the different religion. What is his duty? You ask that from someone from Hindu, someone from Christianity, someone from different, you'll get various answers. And it's these difference in these answers creates a difference in the perception of who is God. But in reality, God is one. So where does God reside? God resides in the soul world. So until and unless God comes and reveals himself and says who he is and know what it is, what we tend to do, it's the elephant in the room. If someone touches the trunk, says, elephant has something long. Someone says, no, elephant has big ears. He doesn't have long trunk. So based on our limited perception and limited knowledge, we create our own perception, our own image. And that image doesn't tally. So it gives the impression that, no, God is something different. So Hindus think God is different. In fact, there's no such thing as Hinduism because every religion has a book, right, by which, you have the teachings. So Islam has Quran, Christians have Bible. What book do Hindus refer? They call it as Gita. But not all will believe that, oh, they'll say Krishna is the god of Gita, but not all of them take Krishna as the god. And they say Lord Krishna. And some will say Krishna Bhagwan. But then those who go to Ayodhya and they follow Ram, they will not agree to Krishna as their Lord, and they will still follow Gita. So, what is the religious book for Hinduism? They refer to the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Gita, and everything, and that adds more to the confusion because every religion has this book and it's nothing the path to attain God. So, religion is a path to attain God. But when that destination of what God is, why we need to involve God in our lives, that interpretation and the way is so varied and so different from religion to religion. There are some common fundamentals, but they vary. And this variation, based on our difference in perception of understanding, causes differences. And these differences then causes, biases and prejudice. So it now creates this difference. So now we are made to believe that, oh, my religion is better than yours, no matter what that religion is. But we forget the whole purpose of religion is to be in that self awareness of who you are and stay connected with God. So that's why we say, religions have existed for close to 2,500 years. The purpose of religion was to achieve peace, happiness, harmony in life. In spite of existing for 2,500 years, did we achieve that goal? What is the state of society in spite of having multiple religions? It just goes down and down. But God says that is also as per drama. That is bound to happen. So he has to come and reveal himself. And what he has to reveal himself, where does he stay? What is his name? What is his duty? And what is his role? And most of the religions forget about that. The emphasis is on what you should do to achieve God, right? So Islam, they'll say, oh, you have to do namaz 2 times a day minimum. Christians will say, oh, if you don't love Jesus, and if you don't, you know, love him for his sacrifice, you will go to hell. So there are these beliefs on these belief systems, but all of them, the emphasis is on, what it is you've done and what God has done. that, it was done, whatever that messenger did, we call that as the messenger. And they themselves said these were messengers. But they forget what is the purpose and goal of God. So if you ask anyone from Islam, they will say Muhammad was the last messenger. But in Islam, nowhere in Quran it says God himself cannot come. So there's this preconceived notion that God will always send a messenger. Why cannot God come by himself? They will not be able to answer. Same question you ask from Christianity, will God come? They'll say, yes, yes, Jesus will come, right? There will be a judgment day when he will come and the dead will rise. Now, all these people, they are from developed countries, America and all these countries. How will a dead person rise? You ask them. So you have to have belief in God. So this ultimate belief in God clouds their judgment to think rationally. Yeah. Hinduism is a very different concept, right? The first religion is Adi Sanatan Dharam, which is the religion of the soul, which is basically staying in the innate qualities of the soul. So, what are the qualities that we say the gunas, right? The innate qualities of the soul are first knowledge. It is through knowledge we are able to understand and believe that yes, this is God, right? When we don't have that knowledge, then we go from one temple to the other based on our perception and based on our attainment, right? But we really don't attain all what we want. So that's why our faith shifts from one temple to the other, from one religion to the other, because we don't experience it. We're just repeating like a parrot what we've been told for centuries, and we just say the same thing without questioning. Right? Because, and if you question, you're branded as, you're not faithful as such. But with knowledge of the soul, what the soul is, right? What is love? Love is also a quality of the soul. Why is it that a child is naturally loving? Because it's in a soulful consciousness state, right? Why is it that in our pursuit of life, love is so important? Why is it that anything we do, we want to be happy? Because these are natural qualities. So anything which is in its natural state will always want to go through its natural state. For example, water. The natural state for water is liquid form. You convert into steam, temperature comes back to normal, it will become liquid. You put it as ice, temperature becomes normal state, it will become liquid. That is its natural state. You don't have to do anything. That's when the ocean, it's in the liquid form. So our natural state is being knowledgeful, being blissful, being loveful, right? Being pure. Pure is not just purity of the body, your purity of the mind, which is very important. So all these things, peaceful, being happy, right? All these are natural qualities of the soul. How does the mind work, right? You have a thought, then you process that thought, and then you do an action. What you take with when you leave the body, you take these deep subconscious habits with you, right? But all religions, they believe you can't take anything with you. The Egyptians, they thought they can take material objects with them, but that remained where they are, right? So unless and until when God comes and reveals himself and says, I have to come every 5,000 years because there's a time cycle. Now, many people have a tough time believing, oh, how can time be cycling? You know, well, because it's very simple and easy to understand once you understand the concept of time. Time is associated with astronomical uh, movements. For example, one day is 24 hours. Why is it 24 hours? Why not 22 hours? Why not 26 hours? Well, because it takes that long for the Earth to rotate around its axis. 1 year is 365 days. Why 365 days? Why not 720 days? On Mars, it will be different, right? On the Moon, it will be moon days different. Earth day is different. Mars day is different in duration. Why the Earth day is 365? Because that's how long it takes for the Earth to revolve around the Sun. Right? So the concept of time is associated with planetary astronomical movements. There's a third dimension of time, which is the axis which in the earth moves around the sun. Now, in all your geography books, they'll show that, the earth is moving around the sun in one plane, right? It's always moving in one plane. But if you look at it, everything is rotating, right? So instead of moving it in one plane, what if it was moving, it was moving in a different plane? It's tilting. When it's moving around the sun, right now it's, let's say, if I was looking at it from very far, far away, it looks like, oh, the earth is always moving, on the x-axis. But what if the earth was rotating, right? It's moving 45 degrees. That axis of rotation around the sun is moving, it becomes 90 degrees and so on. That will add another dimension of time. Now you'll say, well, why no one has discussed it? Because that movement is so slow, you need to be far away and measure that. We never measured it because we didn't even realize that, that has an impact, right? So the north and south pole, they flip as well. So all these things, God comes as a teacher, right? God comes to play three roles. One is as a teacher to give us the knowledge of the soul, to teach us how to be happy all the time, not just today or one day or one moment, but how to live life, how to be divine, and how to be godlike. We believe that, oh, we are humans, we'll always keep making mistakes, and we've reduced our confidence to such a low level that we've accepted we just can't get better, we can't become godlike. But God says, no, I've come here to train you to become a replica of me, right? So what would that replica look like? In the cycle of time, that soul attains all those qualities and becomes devtas, right? That's a divine quality of the soul. But unless there's someone who trains and teaches the soul to be like that, the soul looks at different religious leaders. But all these religious leaders, they themselves are struggling with it, but they just repeat what they've said like a parrot. And that's why religions have failed. But when God comes and reveals himself, and as a teacher teaches every day how to be constantly be in a soul consciousness state, then the soul elevates itself, it elevates its energy level through the transfer of this knowledge. The God then plays the role of a father, because we discussed, right, in one of the sessions, everything changes with time. From birth to birth, the name of our parents will also change. But there's one relationship which remains constant, and it's the relation of the soul with the Supreme Soul. And that relation, what it means, what its power is, the power of love, how it helps you transform from what you thought you could become to what you thought you'll never become, right? Being that divine. So God plays the role of a parent, a spiritual father, right? And through the power of love is able to transform us. And the third role is that of the guide. In Hindi, we call it as the Sadguru. Nowadays, there are too many Sadgurus, but they themselves don't know where the soul world is, what the soul world is, how the world drama operates. So they are lost themselves, and the emphasis is not on that. So those who goes to the temple and other places of worship, they are just they are just happy and content with having a glimpse of God. But those who have faith and understand, right, what God's purpose is, what His duty is, what is our duty based on that knowledge, it's beyond just seeing God. It's becoming more divine like God. As the company, so the color. So being in His, doing activities in His remembrance, experiencing His presence changes life, right? So religions, they didn't help us achieve it until God comes himself. And because we didn't have that understanding, consistent same understanding for all human souls about God, those perceptions, those differences created. So that's why when the golden age starts, so time is the cycle of time divides the 5,000 years into four quadrants: golden age, silver age, iron age, bronze age. So we are like in bronze age, almost towards the end. So going from bronze to golden, it's a tremendous amount of change, right? So in golden age, There's devtas, there's no body consciousness, so that's why there's no pain or suffering as such, because when you're in a soul consciousness stage, there is no ego, because ego is what gives this perception of I did this, I did that, it's because of me. It's all about me, me, me. Whereas in a soul consciousness, our perception of life is unlimited. It's not limited to just my family, my children, my job, my career. The perception is more about the whole world is my family. What am I doing as an instrument to benefit the society? The perception is different. That change in perception, we call it as soul consciousness. You can call it anything else as well. But you're freeing yourself of the limits of the soul, right? Of the limits, the soul stays in the body. That is body consciousness. So when you're removing those limits, the soul is in its natural state. It's not going to be jealous anymore. It knows its potential. It's infinite. So it's content and naturally happy, naturally loving. It's naturally peaceful. It doesn't have to do any effort. All the effort we have to do is now to stay in that state. So that's why, I thought if we put it yes, because if we understand who God is, what the purpose of religion is, what the true state needs to be, if we have that knowledge, then there will automatically be peace. But again, answers can vary based on interpretation. So again, there's no right or wrong answer, but it was more of a thought-provoking question for everyone to think about it. And everyone might have a different perception of the answers, and you necessarily don't have to agree with what I'm saying. One thing I strongly believe is that these subjects are very sensitive, and I respect everyone's opinions and thoughts around it. The last thing I ever want to do is impose my opinions or my thought process on others, especially when it comes to these topics. So uh, just saying out loud and open, please do not take that as me imposing my thoughts or process on you. I respect everyone's interpretation and their belief on what they believe in. I'm just sharing what I've learned based on my personal experiences. So I hope I didn't offend anyone.
Yes, Mukesh, we got that. The broader aspect we got it, but limiting to the question. So yes, it's as a MDM problem. Why? Because we don't have trusted golden copy record from a trusted source.
Exactly. Glad you asked the question. Anyone has any other questions, or you thought the question was not clear itself, or did the quiz help you remember? And some of these questions were more practical oriented, more about the tool base, because that's what ultimately you need to know when to use which tool, right? So that's why I gave a lot of emphasis on which technology to use. Should you use MDM? Should you use ETL? And I put names of a few tools like BigQuery, Snowflake, and so on. That way, you don't know what is BigQuery. I don't know. I have no idea. The more knowledge you have about the tools, and the best way to remember is capability. Cloud data warehousing, what are the tools for the different clouds? Just remember that, then it will become easier and faster for you to become a practical data architect. So any thoughts, comments, or anyone wants to share anything about the quiz or your preparation, or you learned something new, or just want to get your feedback, because next week onwards we'll start case studies.
Shanti, brother. I just
Yes.
missed the first 1 or 2 minutes because I was away thinking that
Yeah,
people are still taking test.
no
I
problem.
also got that question wrong. I said no, but looks like it is a yes. And when you are explaining about this, and I had a couple of points to say, you are
Sure.
explaining about the cycle,
Yes.
day, week, month, and all, and then that
Yeah.
5,000 years is called the kalpa. So
Yes.
Earth to go around all the 360 degrees of sun, we call that as kalpa. That's one thing. And another
Yes.
one is like the um, every year or whatever it is, scientists notice that the true north and magnetic north it
Yes,
keeps changing.
exactly.
So when it widens, then we are in trouble because we rely on magnetic compass to show the
Yes,
direction. And the Earth's chart, the map is based on the North Pole, South Pole, things like that. So, but when we are sailing in the sea, for example, we use magnetic north because that's what we can measure using the compass. Then if it deviates too much, we are in trouble because we can't show the right place because the
yeah,
magnetic one shows something else and true shows something else. So probably, as Baba says, when it deviates too much, there will be a confusion with the satellites and other things to GNSS and GPS, all these systems. It may be puzzled and we can't show the right location on the earth.
yeah,
So probably that's where Baba says science
yes.
and the equipment won't help us.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a very good point. So, a lot of articles on National Geographic and so on. So, the North and the South poles, they've switched multiple times, not once or twice, multiple times. They just don't know the frequency at which it flips. And they also know that, the axis is also tilting, and, there are so many geographical events happening that we cannot comprehend and put the big picture together. But God Himself reveals, saying, don't be too overly reliant on electronic instruments. Where, to remember God, you need an iPhone, otherwise you can't remember God, or you need an Android phone, otherwise you can't remember God, right? Because nowadays, right, people read an article, right? To pray the God, they are asking, saying, Alexa, can you start a pray for me and run a prayer for God, right? So there's overly reliance on electronics that without it, our life will come to a standstill. But God Himself says, it is just a matter of time. It will come to a standstill. So always make sure your state of mind is making good use of the electronic instruments, but not overly dependent on that. That the day comes when you don't have that electronics with you, your mind is not stable anymore. He wants us to be perfectly happy in any condition, every condition, with and without the electronics. And what he also says is, if you look at it, we've rapidly made progress in just last 100 years. Before that, there wasn't much of use of electronics. Computers didn't exist. We are from that generation when we grew up without cell phones. Nowadays, children's I've seen 4 years use iPad and iPhones as well, but we didn't. So it has rapidly increased to a point where the new generation, they're totally overly reliant on it, that without that, they will be lost and confused. So that's a warning for those who are overly reliant on electronics to, make sure you uh, you reduce your screen time with your phone, because what you need to maximize is the personal time with the Supreme Soul, rather than increasing or spending so much time with your phone. So try to cut down as much as possible. One trick I do is I have my WhatsApp notification off, because it's a constant disturbance that you're trying to focus and do something, and your phone is constantly pinging as well. And usually, most of the time, 98% of the time, it's nothing important, right? So it's like you're giving your remote control for someone else to be disturbed. So to be efficient and to be focused, I turn off WhatsApp notification. If something is really important, so the person will call me. And if it's not important, they can certainly wait. When I will check it periodically every 4 6 hours, but not every minute, every hour, because then it becomes an obsessive, compulsive behavior. Right? That's what we want to avoid. Thanks for bringing that up, Ramesh.
Mukesh,
Yes.
one more thing, like while we were preparing all the topics we have shared, so it's a kind of, whatever critical conceptual things you have shared us or taught us. So probably we understand those. But
Hmm.
when, going to other aspects or other questions, so it's kind of a, overwhelming to us. Why? Because there's a lot of concepts and a lot of tools
Mhm.
So we were sometime, I personally was like kind of a struggling and, looking at the multiple websites or ChatGPT or Gemini and all, and maybe referring some books and trying to collate. So somewhere probably, I mean, you can give us some insights or short time on like one thing was coming into my mind, like streaming architecture, like the question was there. So we tried to understand that. But are streaming and event-driven system are same or different, or how they are being
Yeah.
used? So that kind of a questions. So probably that's are coming, and probably uh, all these topics, and so not
Yeah, no, it's a
we
very
need to
good
struggle
question.
on that basically.
Yeah, no,
So,
no.
so my question. So
First of
in
all, yeah, I'm very glad
those
you're
type.
expressing that it's overwhelming, because that feedback helps me to make sure, I'm reiterating it and, putting case studies with it, because we don't want to overwhelm you or anyone, right? But it is a lot of knowledge. So what we'll do is we'll take it slowly. We'll do case studies, case by case. We'll do a case studies for streaming. And all of this is based on case studies on practical experience that I've come across. So that way, you can ask any question, because I'll be able to answer any question. So I'll cover one case study related with streaming, one related with event driven. There is some commonality, and there is a little bit not specific to streaming as well. So we'll cover all that in the case studies. But what I would suggest is topics that you think these are complicated, or like you mentioned the example of streaming, or this concept definitely needs to have a case study. The more feedback I will get, then I can give multiple case studies as well, right? So I've worked with 35 plus clients, so I've got like too many case studies. So I'm picking and choosing those case studies per topic, and I'm planning to select one per topic, but I have more than one. So what you feel is like, sufficiently confident and it's not overwhelming, but you're able to apply that theory. That's where we think, yes, you'll be able to get a job, because you got enough information to talk about it, apply it, and, be able to take a problem and solve it. So that is the intention. So based on collective feedback from all of you are saying, well, I'm still not able to apply this concept, how it works and everything. I can assure you, we will keep the sessions on until we've achieved that objective. Because our purpose is not just to say, oh, we did a class for 3 months or 4 months. Our goal is, what did we achieve? However long it takes. However long it takes for you to feel comfortable, however long it takes for you to get a high paying job. Right. So we are committed to it. As long as you're focused, you're committed to it, we will get that outcome. It's just a matter of time. So don't worry about it. Our goal is to constantly stay happy, focus on the effort, not on the outcome. Right. So just what you're doing, reading through other blogs, website, that is always good, because you're going to get different information. You are going to get the same information in different format. So your brain will absorb that a lot quicker. And there will be some information which won't match, right? Because some of these articles are inaccurate, some are outdated. Like the one good example is you had posted on the WhatsApp group about message size being unlimited on Kafka, which is not true. But then when you posted it, I know exactly what's not true, and then I respond to it as well. So in that case, that triggers a discussion, and you'll be like, okay, this is what it is. And then you can talk about it in the interview, right? And we'll do a case study for it as well. So it's just the practice, right? With over the period of time, it'll become natural to you, because you've done it so much, so many times. You applied it so many times. That'll become natural. So the way how it becomes natural is repeatedly. You do the same thing again and again, then it becomes your nature. It appears natural. So you're still learning new things. So it appears overwhelming, but with time, it'll become very natural. So don't worry about it.
And pointing to your question that I posted for Apache Kafka. So I mean, you mentioned that this is not right, and probably in that book, I think this Apache Kafka is implemented like in the on-premise itself, and probably for that they are referring. Is it
Yeah,
true?
see the
I'm not
message
sure.
size. Yeah, see, when you're publishing message, there's a limit to each message. Now, when you store these messages, right? So Kafka has gone through its evolution. Previously, Kafka was stateless. So message goes through this publish. So Kafka has the capabilities pub sub, publish, subscribe. like a radio tower. You broadcast a signal, anyone who catches and tunes into the radio signal gets it. So it is not, it wasn't storing that information. So the size of the message that it's publishing, that is relevant and still is relevant. Over the period of time, what Confluent is that open source group, which took that code base from LinkedIn, and now, they commercialize it. If you want support, you have to pay for it. But if you don't want that support, you can use the free version. But essentially, there is a capability now where you have a database within Kafka where you can store that message. So that's called KSQL, right? So it has its own database where you can store each of that message. So you have audit, logging, and other capabilities. How much data you can store in that database, that depends, how big your database is and how you're configuring it and so on. So from that perspective, yes, it's infinite because you can horizontally scale it and so on. But still, the individual message size, even till today, Confluent recommends that you use message size not more than 1 MB, right? Maximum 10 MB, and you have to change a configuration parameter. But if you were storing that within the KSQL database, then yes, you can store, but there's always limits to it, but you can always architect and design to it. So far, most of the clients, they don't use that feature anyway, because instead of persisting it in Kafka, they want to store it in the data lake. So yes, it's a great feature, but it's really not used as such because why store that message in Kafka? It does make sense architecturally. We'll cover it in the case study. There's something called as Lambda architecture, Kappa architecture, and Mu architecture. Cover that in detail, but just for those who want to do self-reading, Lambda architecture, just like the Greek symbol, right? The shape of lambda. If you look at the Greek symbol lambda, data comes from the top of that lambda, and then there's a V, right? It bifurcates. So what lambda says, well, I'll send one path to your data lake, and the other path you can process through Spark or Databricks. So you can process that data which is coming in through Kafka. You can have one consumer to consume and process that data in real time, and another consumer storing it in the data lake. Essentially, that is Lambda architecture. In Kappa, if you see, right, it's more like a case symbol. It says, well, the dot is again Kafka. I'm going to stream it, one to data lake, one to real time, or whoever wants it. Right? I don't really care who it is. So it's very similar like Lambda. Mu is different. The Greek symbol mu looks like a U. And that's where the KSQL comes in, where the mu architecture is like, I don't need to store it in two different places. I can just store it in one and replay it and pull it from that other location as and when needed. So essentially, the mu architecture, Kafka stores the message when itself. You subscribe to it in real time. And if you need the historical data, you can always go and retrieve it from Kafka because Kafka is storing it as well. So that is the mu architecture. In theory, in paper, it sounds good, looks logical. Practically, no one uses it because not all your data is streaming data. You still have a lot of batch data. You have data coming in through other data sources that are not using Kafka. So the moment you have data which is not coming through Kafka, Mu architecture fails because now you have other data sources. You need to retrieve it from there. How will you get it, right? So Mu architecture fails. But if you had everything going through Kafka, then it makes sense that you store the data within Kafka, and anything you need it back for data warehousing, anything, you just retrieve it back from Kafka. But essentially, you're creating the data layer within Kafka, and organizations don't like that. So that's why no one uses it. But don't worry
Okay,
about it. This is all
yeah.
overwhelming, right? We'll cover all this in the case studies.
Okay, Mukesh. Two more points I request.
Yeah.
One is like, maybe what self-study we can do, like, there are, I've seen like for like Snowflake or Databricks, there are some, maybe some video or training or a small certification, maybe of 2, 3 hours or 4 hours. So
Yeah.
which one you suggest? Like, Azure Data Factory, Snowflake,
Snowflake.
Databricks.
Invest your time in Snowflake because so I'll they will you won't go wrong by investing in Snowflake. So read a little bit about Databricks. There are a lot of good videos. I'll send one YouTube video. I personally learned a lot from it. I'll send you that link. It's been a while, so I hope it's still there on YouTube. But read on YouTube about what's a lake house, a data lake house. And there are a lot of good videos by Databricks about what is lake house architecture. Very good videos. And watch the case studies published by Snowflake. I personally learned a lot by just reading those white papers on the Snowflake website. So if you have extra time, you've got the time, read a book about Snowflake, look at the Snowflake case studies, look at Snowflake white papers, read about how you will do data migration from Teradata to Snowflake. Snowflake has a good white paper on it. Just reading that white paper will help you a lot because that's one of the case studies we are going to do. And the basis for that case study is the Snowflake white paper, how to do data migration from on-prem to the cloud.
Okay. Okay, Mukesh.
Yeah.
And probably like next week we are starting with the case studies. So
Yeah,
maybe
next.
you can just give us heads
Yeah.
up. So
So
maybe
next
we
week,
can
what
try
we'll do
to.
is, we'll cover the case studies of this large message since we already started this topic. So the problem statement is one of the organization, they because of this limitation of Kafka that you cannot send more than 1 MB, they needed a generic pattern to be able to share data in real time with different consumers. So how to share data in real time with different consumers uh, from different backends, but with no restriction of 1 MB. So in this particular case, the client had one database, it had all the data in it. One of the consumer was Salesforce, and Salesforce is outside the data center because Salesforce has its own cloud. So Salesforce needed to consume all that data in real time. So how do you feed data, lots of bulk, lot of high volume data to another consumer or another application or another IT system, CRM system like Salesforce, but make it generic so that it's Salesforce or anything else, they can just subscribe to that data, but no limitation on the size of data that it should be 10 MB. It could be bigger size data as well. How do you build a generic pattern which supports or maximize the reuse of the data? So I want you to think, how would you approach that problem statement? And I'll give the hint, right? Read the Confluence uh, website on what is their recommended practice for sending large messages. So the answer is there, but you just have to build onto that answer, use your data architecture concept and say, okay, this is what the solution looks like. And I'll show you how I read the answer, how I put my twist on it and say, no, this is what it is.
Okay, thanks, Mukesh.
Yeah. To charge my phone before it gets discharged. Okay, any other question? Okay, if not, I think we exceeded hour and a half. Congratulations for all of you for giving the test. Results doesn't matter. Thank you for your courage, for your preparation. Hopefully, it's just with the matter of time you will get the desired outcome. But stay focused on the effort, not on the outcome.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you, Miss.
yes.
Actually, I have prepared from last 2 days, from last minute exam. So throughout the night, actually, I prepared and I've gone through all the concept. Yeah, I missed it from some classes. Yeah, thank you for this exam so that I could cover all the theory part.
Okay, good. Glad to hear that, Damayanti. Okay,
Yeah,
if
thank you.
anything Yeah, thank you for preparing. Anything else anyone wants to add? Otherwise, we can end the session today. If not, all of you have a great weekend and a great week as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.